Welcome to Sounding Board, a presentation of Seroptimist International of Novato, whose mission it is to improve the lives of girls and women, both locally and globally. I'm Freda Kaplan, and my guest is Phyllis Gould, a Rosie the Riveter. Welcome, Phyllis.
Hello. My name is Phyllis. During the war, I was a welder in the shipyards. And they now call us Rosie the Riveters, but that name covers every woman who replaced a man in a job, regardless of what it was. We happened to work in the shipyards, there were the aircraft factories, women even worked on the railroads. And so now we have a place, a park, and a visitor center where people can go and see some of what we did, the story of what we did. And I started writing letters to the president, first to Michelle Obama when they were first elected, thinking that it was time that we were recognized by the federal government. And I knew that they were recognizing the military, but not us. And so I started writing letters and never got answers, and then decided I would write just one more letter. And that was to Vice President Joe Biden. I wrote that in May of 13, and it was in October that first I got a call from someone in his office saying that he wanted to talk to me, and he would call the next day. So we set a time, and they asked me to have my picture taken while I was talking to him. And so later she sent me the picture of him talking to me, and I had sent her the picture of me talking to him.
Oh, how interesting.
And he invited 5 of us to come to the White House. And in my letter, I had wanted to keep it a small group so it would be personal. And I included the names of the women that I wanted to be my companions. And so we were invited, and needless to say, everyone was really excited. But I didn't think ahead of time what would happen if somebody said yes. And it's been a magical fairy tale, hard work, all of it. But now we have reached our goal, and we will be going. We had to raise our own money, and not knowing anything about how to go about this, it was a relatively short time before we had the airfare covered, the hotel covered, and I'm not sure of all the little details, but we've had donations that have come in enough that will cover everything we need.
So when do you think you'll go?
We'll be there the first week of April. And at first, people thought we would only go, just go and make a 3-day trip, just go to the White House and come right back. But more and more things are going to happen while we're there. We know we'll be meeting with congressmen, and Congressman Huffman said in Nancy Pelosi's office. So that'll be an event. And a woman, and I'm not sure of her position, but I think she's part of the National Mercy Housing people, and she was the hostess for a luncheon. And then I heard there's going to be some kind of a celebration at the airport, but I don't know what that's about.
Wow. So it's finally happening. It's been 70 years? Is that how long since
Yeah.
World War II?
Uh-huh.
Wow. It was a long time coming, but now it's happening. That's wonderful.
Well, I told the people that I wanted it to be a grand slam. I really want my picture taken in the Oval Office with the president and the vice president. And I said that would be something that my descendants down the line would look at and then wonder, what was that woman about, you know? And
something important.
uh-huh.
Yeah. The things that you did and the other women did, because the men were off fighting the war, what helped this country survive the war and win the war. And I understand women built munitions or built airplanes, built ships.
Mm-hmm.
You were with the ships. You
Uh-huh.
were a welder.
A welder.
With the
Uh-huh.
ships, yeah. And your mother and your sisters?
I was the first one. Then my sister Marge became a welder. Then my sister Marion became a draftsman, and then my mom wanted to get in on the act. So she went to the hiring hall dressed in her suit, her gloves, and her hat, and they laughed at her.
She didn't get the job.
No, she didn't get the job. And so my sister suggested that if she really wanted to get a job, she had to get coveralls. So she did. She had her bandana and her coveralls, and they hired her, and she became a painter. And her first, I guess the first day, she dropped a can of paint, and so they said, okay, that's not going to work. And they had brass things all over the ships that they didn't want paint to cover. So that's what she did. She put tape over the brass pieces so that they didn't get painted.
Everyone did their part.
Uh-huh.
And I recall you saying about the sleeping arrangements in your household.
As my house, which was a little tract house, 2 bedrooms, and as the members of the family moved down from Oregon, it got super crowded, and so I got onto graveyard shift, and so did my sister Marge. So we slept in the bed in the daytime, and somebody else slept in it at night.
That's wonderful. Yeah, round-the-clock workers.
Uh-huh.
I guess that's how they built those ships, around the clock.
It was. Yeah, 24 hours.
How long did it take to build one?
They built one, which was a special project to see how fast they could build it, in 4 days and some odd hours. And it sailed out of the Golden Gate fully loaded in a week.
Wow.
So that was the only one they did that way, though. I'm not sure, because I built the deck houses and I never saw the ships. So I'm not sure.
What did they carry, the ships? What was their cargo?
Whatever was needed, I guess.
They weren't troop ships, though.
They did use them at times. I know during the Korean War, they were still using those ships. And my brother was in the Korean War, and he came home on one. So and then the one they have on display now that's been restored was actually built in Richmond, and it was the last one in the mothball fleet. And it was given to the museum and then towed from Vallejo over. And it was just a rusted mess, but it's all restored now.
And you can go on that?
Yes, you can.
And you built part of that ship?
Uh-huh.
Oh, how wonderful.
Yeah.
Wow. You were one of the first people who went to work in the shipyard, is that right?
That's right. I went to the hiring hall and was assigned 4 to 8 in the morning at welding school. And in 2 weeks, they said I was ready to go on the job and go into Oakland to the hiring hall. So I did, and they said they couldn't hire me until I joined the Boilermakers Union. So I went there, and this man said, "We don't take no women and no blacks." And I was so intimidated, and I went home, and I went back a second time, and then the third time I went to the hiring hall. When I went up to the window and they said no, I just started crying. And some man at a table near the back of the room asked me what was wrong, and I told him, and he said, "Go back up there." And they gave me a job. But they didn't send me out to work. They waited until they hired, I think there were a total of 6 of us, and a chaperone, and then we were allowed to go out to the job, because they had no idea how the men would receive us. And I'm sure they were smiling behind our backs, but there wasn't any problem.
Oh.
And then they hired more women, and then just recently I got some books from the National Boilermakers Union, and in there it had a timeline of their history, and it was July 1942 when they opened it up for women, and that was when I was hired.
That was you.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
Yeah.
You were one of those.
Yeah.
Well, that's a landmark moment, really, for women. That's wonderful. Did you go back afterwards? Did you continue working, or did you go back home?
Oh, I never intended to work outside the home. This was just something special. Everybody was needed to do something, and I was glad to, when it was over. I really enjoyed it. I really did enjoy the welding part of it. Took great pride in it. But I was glad to go back home, be a housewife, and have babies.
Wow. And how did your husband at the time feel about you? You worked in the same plant as he did?
Unfortunately. He didn't approve of it at all. We were just kids when we married. I was 17, he was 19, and he was at the end of the Depression, and men at that time were the head of the household. And so when I said I wanted to, he said he was going to learn to weld and work in the shipyards, and I piped up and said, "Me too." Well, that didn't go over very well, and so it was a while. He had worked there a while before I ever started, and then I was doing the same work he was doing, and for the same pay, and he couldn't handle it, so that broke up the marriage.
What was the pay at that time?
The starting pay was 90 cents an hour, and on graveyard it was $1.56, and that was the top pay.
Interesting.
But I read in that Boilermakers book that was equivalent to $10 to $15 an hour.
Oh, and today's rates.
In today's.
Yeah. You mentioned at one point that there were no women's clothes for work, no work clothes for women. What did you wear?
No, women wore dresses.
Yeah.
And so we wore men's clothes, men's boots, and jeans, and all the sweatshirts were gray. It's the only color they made them. And so my little vanity was that I wore a cotton shirt under my sweatshirt with the collar out, and I matched the color of the shirt with my bandana. So if I wore a pink shirt. I had a pink bandana, and that was my girl thing.
But the bandana that you see on the posters of Rosie the Riveter, that was what people wore then.
Oh, you had to. You couldn't wear any jewelry, and you had to have your hair covered, totally covered, because it was so dangerous.
I see.
And the jewelry too, even wedding rings, people that had never taken them off before had to, because it was a potential danger.
They could catch on things.
Uh-huh.
Wow. So over in Richmond now, Point Richmond really, you mentioned that there's the visitor center and a memorial. They've got pictures of you and your sisters and some paving stones with some quotes from you. And it's a national park. And there's a very interesting visitor center. I've been there, and I really enjoyed the displays. And a restaurant. And then there's that giant building next to it that they call Craneway Pavilion now. But what was it before?
It was the Ford assembly plant.
Ford.
And I worked just down the street from that. Never knew what was going on there. At that time, you didn't, it was like you had blinders on. You didn't dare look around, and you just minded your own personal business. And but they did, I think, jeeps and tanks and various things in that building.
Wow. So you didn't ask what was there? You didn't take pictures?
No. I never took the camera away from home. Any pictures I have were taken in my front yard.
Interesting. Wow. It was a different time, a dangerous time.
It was. And there were all these posters warning you about different things, and, you know, loose lips sink ships, and so we paid attention to them. We didn't have the input of TV and other things. It was the radio or the newsreels at the theater, which the theaters ran 24 hours a day too.
Oh, that's interesting.
And lots of people that couldn't find places to live slept in the theaters.
Wow. Amazing. They were important. So it must not have been too expensive to get into a theater.
No, it couldn't have been. I don't remember what the price was, but...
a nice warm place.
And there was an excellent transportation system. The ferries brought workers over from the city, and buses, trolleys. The Bay Bridge had a trolley that ran across. On the under level was for buses and trains, and the upper level was for cars.
If only they had that now. It's just what we need. How no foresight in getting rid of that, I guess.
No.
We could certainly use public transportation.
But now you need all those lanes going each direction.
True. For one person in each car.
Yeah.
Wow. In your work, did you, you knew you were building things for the war, and they took it away and off it went to Europe or to the Pacific Islands? Wow. So is that what the Vice President is going to talk about, what you contributed? And
I think so. He told me a story that just was heartbreaking about being in France at a cemetery, and it was a congressional group had gone over there to honor people from D-Day. And he saw this family, the man in a wheelchair, his sons on each side, and his wife pushing the wheelchair. So he said he went over to thank him for his service. and his wife had her hand on his shoulder, and he reached up and put his hand on top of hers and says, "Don't thank me, thank her. She built the ships that brought us here."
Wow.
Yeah. So he said from that point he really had an appreciation of what we'd done.
So that's why he invited you.
That's why. Uh-huh.
It wasn't a political ploy or anything. He
No.
honestly cared.
Uh-huh.
Wow. And you've spoken to him since that day?
Just the one time, but it was about 15 minutes because he just talked on and on.
How nice.
Yeah.
What sort of things did he talk about?
He talked about the women in his family, and yeah, he's just a warm person. So I'm looking forward to it. And he said he wanted a hug, and I said I want one back. So
So we'll get a picture of you hugging.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Because I've seen pictures of him hugging people.
Oh, he's a hugger.
Yeah.
Great. And you think you'll get to the Oval Office?
It's what I wanted. I hope so. All I know is that he said he couldn't guarantee that Obama would be there. And that's, never know what's happening in the world. That
There might be more important things happening for him.
But he knows I want a picture of the two of them in the Oval Office.
Good, so they'll give it a try.
And then the girl in his office, I talk to her at least once a week. She calls me to check on what's happening, and if there's some semi-crisis, I call her. But so far, we don't have a date specific. But I think that'll be in the last 2 weeks, maybe, before we leave, because we're going to be there a week. And
this is in April you're going to be there. The first week in April.
First week of April. I think we'll fly in the last part of March on a Sunday and then leave the following Sunday. So we'll have the full week. And
each of you has someone going with you.
Uh-huh.
That's nice.
Yeah. Well, it's pretty necessary. I could do it, boost the luggage around and that, but just the idea of 5 old ladies in the airport dealing with luggage and all that goes with it, I said right from the beginning that we all needed helpers. And
it's more fun that way.
Yeah,
Companion.
It will be, hold my coat.
Yeah. So you don't have to ask the vice president to do that. Oh, how wonderful. That's going to be a lot of fun. And in the spring with the cherry blossoms.
I hope the cherry blossoms are in bloom.
Yeah, that'll be very nice.
They said they should be, but you never know. It changes with the weather.
I see.
And sometimes it's later. I saw a tree today with cherry blossoms.
Yeah, yeah. Spring is early.
Yeah.
Wow. We want to thank you for your contribution to keeping our country and our society safe. And I know you've been covered in the newspaper 2 or 3 times, and today I just happened to have a copy. Our local paper featured you and the other Rosies, and we're proud to see that. On the same day, you've got a television show and a newspaper feature on you. You've done a lot of work. You've worked really hard. You've got a lot of energy that you've put into making this happen.
It has been a lot more work than I thought it would be. I like to write letters, but I like to do it on my own thing. But I've had to write a lot of fundraising letters. And I'm glad to say that that part is over because we've reached our goal. And they said no more fundraising.
How wonderful.
So I don't know all the specifics, but I guess it's a done deal.
And when you come back, we'll ask you to come back on the show and bring some pictures, and your hugging pictures, and maybe some souvenirs that you pick up along the way. That's lovely. Thank you so much for being on our show and talking to us and telling us about the Rosie the Riveter women. And by the way, about what are the ages of the other women that are going?
Well, I think the youngest is 87 and the oldest is 93.
Oh, wow.
So we're up there.
From World War II, which was about 70 years ago.
And
Yeah.
I'm 92. So
You have a lot of wonderful energy. That's enviable. So thank you so much, Phyllis, for talking to us. And I'd like to thank the crew, all the women from Seroptimist International who produced Sounding Board, who direct it, who are the camera people, and who are the interviewers. And I'd also like to thank Novato Public Access Television, especially Leon Johnson, who makes our shows possible. Thank you.